I am so grateful for all of you being here to share this important time that we have together, but especially Sunita Viswanath for making the time to be with us today. We have had some wonderful conversation time ahead of meeting together, and I'm so excited for you to share with these people who are gathered from around the world to come and hear about the important work you do. And Sunita, it is my practice not to give a bio of people when they come because I don't want to tell people's stories for them. So I would be happy if you would share in whatever way you would like to. And we are here with our hearts and our minds open to listen to what you have to share with us. So thank you and welcome, Sunita.
Thank you, Margaret. Should I just get started?
Yeah, thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I was so thrilled when we connected. And it's one of those times when usually I complain about social media, but sometimes beautiful things come from social media. Uh, so I actually prepared some small, short, it's not too long, I think 10 minutes or so remarks. But I would love to just chat with all of you after I share. Um, and so I'm Sunita Viswanath, and I'm a progressive Hindu, and I'm a human rights activist. And I just want to say there may be a day when I will find home, truly home, in the Hindu community with the views that I have, which aren't radical in my view. My views are just that human dignity is the absolute right of every human being on this planet. And any of us who are involved in either social justice work or faith leadership, um, I would hope would agree with that. But that itself, that statement, is considered radical and offensive to many. And given the state of affairs in many communities, including mine, which are veering to the far right, I find that the space where I can be truly myself, wholly myself, is interfaith spaces. And so this is my home and you are my tribe. If you would all, just for a moment, if you want to, close your eyes or don't, I'm just going to say a prayer. Om Sahanavavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavadi Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahe Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the divine protect us, nourish us, give us the wisdom to discern right from wrong, and may our engagement together be without conflict. Peace, peace, peace. I'm Sunita Vishwanath, co founder and executive director of Hindus for Human Rights. And I'm so grateful to Margaret and Interfaith Alignment and all of you for having me today. So, by way of an introduction, I'm 56 years old, and I was born into an upper caste Hindu family in South India. And I was raised in both India and the United Kingdom. And so it's very likely that I'll come to Scotland and visit you, Margaret, because I go home sometimes. Um, and I live in the United States, in New York. I've been a human rights activist my whole adult life, but in the past 15 and more years, I have devoted myself to mobilizing Hindus to connect their identity as religious or secular Hindus to the pursuit of justice for all. My spouse, my husband, is an anti Zionist Jew. And so our family is it's interesting conversations in our home, given that I'm an anti-Hindu nationalism Hindu and he's an anti-Zionist Jew. We're both active in pro-democracy movements fighting religious extremism and supremacy. I have just returned from a 10-day multi-faith peace delegation to Palestine. The trip was organized by Rabbis for Ceasefire and Christians for Ceasefire. The Palestinian partner on the ground was a wonderful Christian liberation theology organization that maybe some of you know, called Sabil. Sabil means the way. It was important for me to participate in this delegation because all three of the countries that I've called home, that is India, the UK, and America, are complicit in the genocide that has been relentlessly unfolding for almost a year now. And I feel a profound sense of responsibility. And also, my faith and my humanity require me to take a stand. And as much as I, like probably many of you, many people I know, who have been advocating and showing up in protests and getting arrested and, doing whatever we can to raise our voices from afar, in spite of all of that, the genocide has continued unabated and has even extended its scope. And so for me, it was a no brainer. I couldn't say no when I got the invitation to join the delegation. I've been back about a week now and I'm still processing everything that I saw and witnessed and participated in. As I begin this presentation, I would like to thank and honor my own teachers, my gurus, Professor Anantanand Rambachan and the late Swami Agnivesh, who was a Hindu monk who devoted his entire life to fighting caste and fighting for the rights of bonded laborers in India. My talk today will address the concept of other, because for me, there is no other. In Hindu traditions, there are countless stories that we are told as children and as adults where God shows up in disguise. And if they are treated well, the person gets a boon. And if they are treated poorly, they may be cursed. And the clear lesson is the person who shows up at your door, the stranger, could be God. And so you'd better treat them well or else. Here is one of many such stories. King Rantideva was a very good and just king and loved Lord Vishnu dearly and saw him everywhere. Because he saw God in each of his subjects, he treated them well and they loved him. Lord Vishnu told the other gods that his most favorite devotee of all was King Rantideva. The other gods decided they would test this king. They made the crops fail and they brought famine to his kingdom. Rantideva opened up his granary and made sure everyone had food. When things didn't improve, he opened his palace and gave away all his money and jewels. When things continued to deteriorate, he sat in meditation, sure that his beloved Lord Vishnu would help him. He stopped eating. 2 months passed, and Rantideva's fast and penance continued. His ministers were afraid that he would die, and they begged him to end the fast. He reluctantly agreed for the sake of the country. But just as he was about to take water, a poor man in tattered clothes came. The ministers tried to shoo the man away, but Rantideva called the man to him. The man collapsed with fatigue and hunger. When he came to, Rantideva fed him some food and water, and the man wept with gratitude. The ministers looked at the small amount of food remaining. They did not want anyone else to take the king's food. Just then, a man came with some dogs. The man looked at the king and said, "Sir, my dogs and I are hungry. We will die of hunger." The king did not hesitate to give food to the man and his dogs. Again, the man left happy with his dogs. There was no more food left. Only water was remaining. The king was about to drink the water when another man came in. The ministers turned their eyes away because this man was a Chandala, an untouchable person, or what today we would call a Dalit person. The ministers asked the guards to throw the man out. The man said he was hungry and thirsty and thought he would die. The ministers were stunned to see the king offer water to the man. The man hesitated and said, O king, I am a Chandala and I cannot accept water from your hand. The king shook his head and gave him the water. We were both created by Lord Vishnu. I see him in you just as I see him in every person. The man took water from the king and happily drank it, and the king smiled, watching him quench his thirst. That was when there was a flash of light. The king opened his eyes in surprise as he saw Lord Brahma with Indra and the Devas, and between them, Rantideva saw the beautiful Lord Vishnu, who looked at Rantideva with pride. Lord Vishnu spoke softly. Rantideva, I had told the Devas that you were my greatest devotee. They didn't believe me and they were testing you. You passed the test. Yama, the god of death, spoke. Brahma and Indra came as the first two men to test you. I didn't believe that you passed their test, so I came as the Chandala, sure that you would fail. But we all have to agree. You are the greatest devotee ever. Lord Vishnu spoke again. You have understood me in a way that no one else has. For this I grant you moksha. And don't worry about your people. Everything will be returned to normal and your people will be happy again. The mighty epic, the Mahabharata, includes the teaching even an enemy must be offered appropriate hospitality if he comes to your home. A tree does not deny its shade even to the one who comes to cut it down. The ideal devotee, and this is from the Bhagavad Gita, the ideal devotee is para dukkha dukhi, one who takes the joy and the sorrow of the other as their own. There is no qualifier. It applies to anyone, people we know, people we don't know, people of any race, religion, age, sex, gender, caste, people we agree with, people we don't agree with. This is what the Hindu faith teaches us about how to treat each other. The entire Bhagavad Gita, a chapter within the Mahabharata, is a story of God coming in disguise. The Prince Arjuna is about to go to battle and is paralyzed with anguish. He doesn't want to go to war against his cousins. He doesn't know that his charioteer is none other than Lord Krishna in disguise. And Lord Krishna gives Arjuna divine counsel. And Arjuna, without saying, why would I listen to a mere charioteer, a servant? He actually listens. Lord Krishna says, one who sees the supreme God existing equally in all beings, the imperishable in the perishable, truly sees. Again, the same idea, God or whatever is divine, exists equally and identically in everyone, and in fact, in every part of the universe. The Taittiriya Upanishad has the oft repeated verse, Matrudevo Bhava, Pitrudevo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atiti Devo Bhava. Be one for whom mother, that's Matru, father, Pitru, teacher, Acharya, and Atiti are God. I was taught this prayer as a child, and probably every Hindu child knows they are to respect and revere their parents and teachers as if they are God. Only in recent years did I become fully aware and conscious of that last line, Atiti Devo Bhava. Atiti is often translated as guest, and so the line could be read, be hospitable to your guests. It's pretty simple. Even with this simple translation as guest, this verse does not specify which kind of guest. Anyone who lands up at your door, regardless of race, caste, religion, etc., is to be treated with reverence. That itself is a deep teaching, but actually I feel the meaning of Atiti is much deeper, and this is a learning from my teacher, Anantanand Rambachan. The word Atiti is Atiti. The negates a word, like Himsa is violence and ahimsa is non-violence. Bhaya is fear. Abhaya is fearless. So following that logic, tithi means date or appointment. Atithi, therefore, means without a date or appointment, a person who shows up without an appointment. I read the word as stranger, and this prayer teaches me to put the stranger, one we may see as other, on par with those we most revere. This really means, in sum, that when we see anyone, whether we know them or not, whether they are the same as us or different, we see them as divine. We take their joys and sorrows as if they were our own. And when we believe that the divine exists equally and identically in every living thing in every part of the universe, this interpretation of Hindu traditions teaches me that there is no other. Once one accepts in our heart that there is no other, like I do, we must pursue in our life what I call radical inclusion. I must try to see and connect with the divine, the potential for good in everyone, even my adversaries. And this ideal of paradukha dukhi, that is, seeing the joys and sorrows of another as my own, seeing that ideal is to prioritize the needs of those who are the most marginalized, the neediest, the ones most denied justice, the voiceless. Hindus for Human Rights is an organization which strives to embody these values. We are a human rights organization whose vision is a world where human dignity of all people is sacred and affirmed. As radically inclusive Hindus, we prioritize the work to counter caste and Hindu nationalism, Hindutva, the twin injustices plaguing our community and choking our community with hate. I welcome all of you to contact us at hindusforhumanrights.org. Thank you, and I look forward to conversation.
Sunita, what strikes me so deeply right now is just this week, I sent out to some members of Alignment the interview I had with John Philip Newell, who is an author and teacher of Celtic wisdom. And you have said almost exactly the same words that he said. Seeing the divine in all beings, seeing the divine not only in all beings, but in all parts of the universe, and that everything is sacred. And we know God through all these things. And you are sharing the exact same story and message. And I think that's the beauty of this interfaith work, is that we not only is the message that that we see the divine in all beings, but we are living that through sharing this same message. So thank you for that. Can you tell us some more? Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Margaret. You're just reminding me of an ongoing debate with my oldest son. I just hear his voice in my head right now, because he will say, if he were here right now, he would say, if faith leaders from different faiths are saying the same thing, what makes them different? What makes you Hindu? What? And my response to him is, I don't really need to, I don't feel that I need to explain to somebody what makes me Hindu. I'm Hindu because I say I am. And there are many things that differentiate me from this person who might have a very similar message from me. And we could talk about those differences. Those differences could be theological differences, they could be cultural differences, and so forth. I do believe that at the heart of all the major religions of the world and probably smaller religions of the world, there is this ethic of um, of transformative justice. And that is why when we come together in interfaith spaces, especially social justice activists, it sounds like we're saying similar things. This does not erase differences between us. But I'm truly affirmed when I hear similar messages from people coming from other faiths, and I celebrate also the differences between all.
And that's something that's really important to us here at Alignment is that we are different faith traditions. We want to uphold those differences, and we always refer to it as traditions, because a tradition means something that has been literally handed down to you, given across, right? Trado. Um, and so that's so important that we not forget that, even if we're sharing the same message, that those are coming from distinct places with beautiful differences. Can you talk to us about what it was like to take this deep belief of yours in knowing the divine and the sacred in the other, and going to see war so closely, and seeing and being in places where people are not seeing the divine in one another?
And it's been a week since I've been back, and what I wrote a lot while I was there, and I can send you the dispatches so that the community here can see them and read them. A lot of what we did was provide protective presence um, to communities, families, villages whose land, which is theirs for generations in every case of people that we visited, um, the land was being encroached upon by settlers just right there. You could see them. In the before going on this trip, the settler was a kind of an ambiguous term. I said it, but I didn't really know. Now I know what settlers are. They're human beings, often with weapons in their hand, who often are paid to go and live in the occupied territories, and literally are land thieves. And I've seen them. It's very, now it's very real in my mind. And so protective presence was the thing that we did the most while we were there. And there were 35 people on my delegation. Almost all of them were either with Rabbis for Ceasefire or Christians for Ceasefire. There was one Hindu and one Buddhist. So we sat in the back bench of the bus, and really felt very, very grateful to be on this delegation. And what it felt like to be. So the day after we reached was when we thought we were going, and the main thing we would all be dealing with was the fact that Gaza was being bombarded endlessly. But the day after we reached, the West Bank started getting bombarded, the northern West Bank. That didn't happen until we got there. So the trip, the feeling on the trip changed as soon as we arrived. And the wonderful organization, Sabil, the Christian Liberation Theology Organization, which all of you, everybody should know about them. They're absolutely wonderful organization, really inspiring. They did a great job of adjusting our itinerary so that obviously we're taking risks, but to the extent possible, they avoided sort of extreme risks, and they changed our itinerary according to where we shouldn't go on any particular day. We did a multi-faith prayer vigil at the crossing into southern Gaza. So we weren't allowed to go into Gaza, but on the other side of the crossing. And this was the crossing where humanitarian aid enters Gaza. And in the 2 hours or so that we were there in that crossing, which was basically a big empty parking lot, I only saw 2 trucks go in. And I know that before October 7th, about 500 trucks were going per day. So that itself was extremely hard. on the drive to this crossing, we could see Gaza in the distance. It was a few miles. We were driving parallel to it, and we could see a big black plume of war. And the plume would every once in a while have, you know, a new part to it, and that must have been a new bomb. And while we were doing our multi-faith prayer vigil in the crossing, we could hear bombs. And it was probably the most intense couple of hours of the whole trip. And I was, I guess what I feel about that is that I feel really grateful that Hindu prayers were shared as part of all the prayers that were offered. Um, I haven't come away with hope. Um, it's even gotten worse since we left. One of the places we didn't go to that was taken off our itinerary, an American young woman was killed there while many of us were on our way back. There's now an expanding regional war. So hope isn't something I've come home with. But I've come home with a very profound thought. And it's not a new thought for me, but it's sort of confirmed, it's more confirmed than it was before this trip. And it has to do with this question of the other that I've been talking about. On the trip, the our delegation was mostly Americans and 2 Brits. Everyone we met were people living in Palestine. Almost all of them were Palestinians living in Palestine. And there was a real marked difference in, obviously, positionality, we know that, but also perspective. And the people that we met on the ground, including Sabeel, the organization that was organizing the trip and deciding where we should go, had a both pragmatic approach to what to do in this time of war, but also I really feel a spiritually open perspective. So if there was somebody who was Israeli or even a Jewish person living in Palestine who was against this war, for a ceasefire, but not fully anti-Zionist, or there's some you're called alignment, some misalignment of some kind. The Palestinians that we met, whose lives are literally in the crosshairs, they were much more on the page of holding hands and fighting against this war and building something beautiful together. Whereas us, the people who came from afar, the Westerners, the Americans, the Brits, we were much more caught in a purity politics of who we would talk to and who we would be in a photograph with and where we would go and where we would not go. And I've felt for a long time, I've done work in Afghanistan, I do work in India. I've always felt that the diaspora perspective brings such the diaspora brings such a perspective, and the people on the ground whose lives literally, are made or broken by choices, have more of a openness to talking across difference. And that once again was confirmed. And then there was this woman, her name is Tanya Nasser. She was the godmother of a young woman, 23 years old. She might have turned 24, Leon Nasser. She was a student who was picked up back in April by the IDF in the middle of the night. She's under arbitrary detention for no reason, no evidence, no trial, no explanation. Her family doesn't even know where she's imprisoned. So the godmother of Leon, after talking about the goddaughter's case, she then turned to us and shared words, that were more philosophical. And she said, there's no hope. Hope is fast receding, but the only hope we have is in the anger of your anger, people in the world. And that to me echoed what all the Palestinians that we met said. The Palestinian people wanted more delegations like us to come. They wanted every human being to connect with their struggle. They were just, they weren't saying this kind of person can connect, but this one can't. They wanted the world to see and join. And that's what Tanya, who's 83, was saying. And then she really looked directly at us. And she said, what we are going through in Palestine, of course, it's our crisis, but I think it's our gift to you. I think you will find salvation by connecting with us. It was so powerful. And those are the words that reverberate through my being. And it completely echoes these deep teachings from my traditions. So that's to your question, that's what we need to do in war, in crisis, and in completely normal times. We need to look at the person we don't want to look at and find something to connect to. That's the only place where hope lives.